Well, we're out with a familiar old friend here today. Honda Jazz back brakes. As you can see, they're looking a little bit on the crispy side in there. These discs I don't think are that old, but you can see there's not a great deal of friction taking place. They're only getting, they're only getting friction on that maybe centimetre wide band. Let's have a look at the back on the passenger side. Passenger side, it's not much better, and that disc is definitely seen better days. I guess if you had a lathe or something like that, you could make it a bit better. Definitely a bit more consistent friction taking place there, but yeah, it's not the best. So I've ordered two new discs and I've got new pads, so we'll see what difference that makes. It has actually been affecting the handbrake performance, so I'll show you the discs that I've bought. These are the discs that I've bought, Mintex. So there's the code if you need Mintex discs. I've gone for Mintex because I used Mintex coated discs on my Kia Ceed, and they seem to have resisted the corrosion far better than any other set I used in the past. I've not actually opened this box yet, but yeah, I need to get a key and cut the sellotape. There we go. So that's the discs. Hopefully these will be more corrosion resistant. And then I wasn't particularly fussed about the brake shoes, but I've gone for these Bosch ones. I don't know if they're any better than any other brand, but yeah. So I see they fit the Civic as well, so, and also a Rover 25, so that's always a thing to look out for in the future. Maybe you get Rover 25 pads cheaper, or advertised as Rover 25 pads cheaper. So I'll get my tools out and get started. Oh, I'll show you what the on my Kia Ceed, that's what my Mintex discs look like, and they've been on there I think at least a year, certainly been through a Scottish winter, and they're not looking particularly corroded at all. So hence the reason for going for Mintex, and presumably be a better service life. Well, safety first as usual. The wheel's underneath the sill. Jacked it up. I've used the trusty Lidl torque wrench to take off the nuts for the lug nuts. That's the spacer for the wheel. I need to take that off. Don't forget to put that back on. Yeah, as you can see, they're a bit shitty. There's a reasonable amount of life left on those pads, but obviously I'm not going to reuse them. So the next thing I'm going to do is find a place to put this axle stand. I'll just chuck it in under there somewhere. And then, so the next thing I've got to undo these two Phillips screws. Hopefully they come off no problem. Famous last words. Then I've got these, I don't know if they're 12s, there and there. Take the caliper off. I can't remember if it's a screw in or if it's just compression, but I'll soon find out. But yeah, in theory it doesn't look too bad. And then before I go any further, I'll just check that the discs are correct. Just doing a quick test fit. Yeah, looks like it's okay. certainly a difference in the corrosion. But yeah, everything seems to line up. I think the screws, I'm not entirely sure about the screws where they line up, but yeah, it looks like it's the right disc anyway. So next step, I'll get these out hopefully and take it from there. Quite surprised at that. Those screws, they were tight, but I gave it a quick turn in and a good hard and fast twist, and absolutely spot on. I suspect I've probably put copper slip on them in the past. Where's the lens? Yeah, I'm absolutely certain that's had copper slip on it. Otherwise, up here in Scotland, you'd have zero chance of these things coming out without a hell of a fight. So there'll be people out there say, oh, you can't put that on them. Well, maybe if you don't live in Scotland you can't, but they were certainly well and securely snugged in there. So anyway, that's that done. Next thing is to take out these as I believe 12mm bolts. The sliders, I'll check the condition of the sliders. I'm pretty sure I actually replaced the sliders just the other year. I'd need to look back at my videos just to double check, but the sliders I'm sure are new, so they should hopefully be good. So anyway, we'll find out. One of the things that I'll say, I had to use a 17mm spanner on the caliper guides or slides, whatever you call these. This was rotating, so it may well be in my best interest to put a tiny amount of copper slip on these bolts, but yeah, I had to hold that. It doesn't stay in place, so you'll need to hold that and then use the 12mm socket if you've got corrosion problems up here like it is in Scotland. But you might be living in a part of the world or the country where you don't have a lot of salt on the roads and it won't be a problem. Yeah, it was exactly the same with this bottom one. The lower part's turning. I'm having to hold it with a 17mm and then use the 12mm to break it out. Because of this spring for the handbrake mechanism, I can't just put a short, I can't just put the socket handle onto it with only the socket. I have to put an extension bar. Of course, when you introduce an extension bar, you're at a funny angle and you're trying to hold this with one hand. So I would say use a spanner or a wrench, but you may not have this problem whatsoever. Well, that's the two bolts that were holding the caliper on. Not at all corroded, but they'll definitely be getting some copper ease or copper grease, copper slip, whatever you want to call it, on them to facilitate easier removal in future. These calipers were new, I think maybe 2 years ago now. I wasn't very impressed with the company that sold these to me, so I wouldn't recommend them. They came with a 2-year warranty, and I had a problem with one. I think as soon as it was fitted, and they were trying everything to get out of it. Anyway, I eventually did get another one, but it actually cost money to do it. It should have been replaced free, but they wanted postage charges. And then I had a problem with the other side a while later, and they just said, no, you need to get an engineer's report, you need to get this, and I was like, fuck this. So anyway, long story short, I wouldn't darken their door again, but hopefully this will now come out. I'll need two hands to do that because there is a bit of tension with the the handbrake cable. Well, I'm happy to report the top one is absolutely spot on. The bottom one, not quite so good. I can actually feel a little bit of a grind on that. So I'm going to remove the pad carrier, which I need to do anyway to change the disc. But I'm going to get that out and get that better cleaned up, because it's fine, it does move, but it's nowhere near as nice and springy and serviceable as this one. But again, that's Scottish weather for you. Well, now it's time to take off the pad carrier. So it's 14mm sockets or bolts. There's one there and there's one down here. The caliper's disconnected. There's a bit of resistance in that because it's got this hydraulic hose, and then it's also got the cable for the handbrake. Here's the pads. Pads have actually got, hard to get, there we go. Pads have actually got a bit of a groove in them. Let's see if that, yeah, that's better. The pads have got a slight lip on them there. Here's the inner one. You can see slight groove. Still a reasonable amount of meat left on them. But yeah, you can see that in Scotland things get corroded pretty quickly. So yeah, hopefully these come out not too bad. I'm absolutely positive I will have copper greased them, so they should come out reasonably easily. But it's not just like putting a hot knife through butter. There will be a lot of resistance, and I say, I've had on previous videos people going, you should never do that. It's like, well, if you want to be grinding out and tapping new threads into rusty components, by all means don't put copper slip on them. Listen to the experts, they'll tell you not to put it on. Meanwhile, in the real world, up here in Scotland, with this stuff, corrosion, copper grease is your best plan of action. But you don't have to do it by the book. Listen to the experts. I don't know anything, and don't assume that I do. But otherwise, have fun with your rusty nuts. So, in amongst the corrosion, look at that lovely copper slip, copper greased thread. There is resistance. It does actually kind of corrode on, you know, with the edge, the head of the bolt, but it allows it to come out. And this one here, you can see there as well, it's made all the difference. But round about the edge you can see where it's corroding, where the bolt has been fastened. So from my experience, I don't care about putting copper grease on, but folk that drive rally cars and strip down cars every 5 minutes don't think it's a good idea. But anyway, I'm taking the piss here, but it's up to you what you do. But that's what myself and everybody I know who does his own work on cars does up here in Scotland. A bit of that, you don't need to worry about anything else. It'll soon rust into place. There you go, there's the brake disc removed. I'm sure if you had a lathe you could easy enough take that down. You could knock all this off with a hammer or a mallet. It would work, but nah, it's not worth the bother. It's totally taking the finish off there. This is the bit where it was taking the curve off the inner part of the disc. Here's the caliper mounting bracket. So that's the upper one, nice and easy. The bottom one, it's there, but it's not, I mean, it's moving freely. I can see there's a bit needs to be popped back in there, See it? So I'll take that out, clean it, grease it up. I think I've got some Ceratec brake grease somewhere. I'll put that in. Yeah, it does feel a little bit rough, and when you're taking all this to bits, there's no point in doing this and, you know, forgetting to do these things. Might as well do it at the same time. You can see straight away how stuff has got in there and it's contaminated it all. Plus you can see that looks quite corroded. I'll see if I can get some sunlight or something in there. Well, I can't see that for the light, but you'll just have to take my word for it that it's definitely not as clean as it should be. So I'll get a bit of towel in there, clean it out, clean up this guide pin or slide pin. I'm never actually sure what you call these, but caliper slide pins, caliper guide pins. You can tell me in the comments what this should actually be termed. And then, because that's slightly kinked, as you can see, I'm going to have to get in and dig in there with something just to make sure that's nice and clean and clear. So I'll do that and I'll get back. I've put a smearing of copper grease on there, and then I'm just going to fit this on, hopefully. Let's double check those. Yeah, I think I've done it the wrong way. I should have put that there, but yeah, I'll put that on with two hands. I'll take two. So I'll put the disc on. I'll put a little bit of copper slip. There's the thread there. Hopefully you can see that. And there's the thread there. So the next thing is to find the two screws which are in there. I'll apply a little bit more of this old copper grease and then I'll screw them in. That's the two locating screws fitted. I put a little bit on the countersunk area of copper slip as well, but looks a hell of a lot better than the old one. So I'm going to have to screw in this piston. I might actually just try it with a long-armed screwdriver. I've got a proper tool for it. I do remember seeing it the other day. I don't know where it is right now, but I'll certainly give that a go. Just noticed there's a trim piece missing there, so that will need to be filled. I've actually got some of those things from Temu or AliExpress somewhere. Panel retaining clip, or whatever you call these things, into the hole. Push! It's fitted at the back anyway. Where's the screwdriver? Let's just double check it. Well, I think that's as good as it's going to get. But anyway, I think they were about a pound or something for 200 or 100, I can't remember. But anyway, back to the discs. So next thing I'm going to have to do is wind this back as far as I can. Sorry, I'm not even looking at it. Wind that piston back as far as I can. And then over here I've cleaned up this part. I've cleaned up the guide pin, and I've turned this inside out and I've cleaned it up. It doesn't look like I've cleaned it actually when you see it there, but I have actually cleaned that up. So I'm going to reinsert that into there. I might take out these shims, and I've got my Dremel. I might give it a quick whiz underneath to take any additional corrosion off, then put it back together. I've used the cheap and cheerful Dremel that I picked up at the local car boot sale. and I've given that a decent sanding down. I'll put grease over it, which will hopefully stop anything, but these shims, I'll give them a quick rub down as well, take all the crap off. I think they're identical, looks like the same. That's needing straightened out, I think, that one. I'll give them a quick whiz with a grinder, just very lightly, and then I'll reassemble with some grease, and hopefully that'll be in the condition it should be. And then I'll give these a further clean out and back onto the car. I've cleaned everything up best I can. I put a little bit of copper grease on there. I used the Dremel to clean up those faces. I've cleaned up the shims. I've also reseated the grommet for the slide pin, and the next thing to do is grease this up and put it in, and that should be that assembled. Then I'll check the fit of the pads, see if they need to have any grinding done to them. I've got my cheap and cheerful grinder there if I need to take any edges off the ears, but with having ground down the surfaces for the shims, hopefully there won't need to be any, but I've never had a set of brake pads yet that fits perfectly, so I'm not expecting that to be any different. I've put this one in. That's the original one, which was fine, nice and bouncy. This one, it's extremely bouncy, so the seating has made all the difference. There'll definitely be a little bit of copper slip going in there, but yeah, I'm happy with that. Now to put the shims together and get the pads out of the box. To my surprise, I was wrong. Those fit in no problem at all after I've ground down, so there must have been a fair bit of expansion with corrosion. So anyway, I've got them in dry at the moment. In certain climates, dry will be fine, but certainly not here in Scotland, so they will have a smearing of grease put on them once they're fitted to the pad carrier. Once it's bolted into the car, I should say. I'll put grease on the ears. Oh, that's the pads in. This will all get a good scoosh down with Eurocar Parts finest brake cleaner. No, they don't sponsor this, so if they want to send me some, I'm certainly happy to use it, but that's about the cheapest stuff I can ever find. So the next thing is I'm going to get a long handled flat bladed screwdriver. I'm just going to try and turn in that piston. Hopefully it's not a problem. So the pads have gone in quite nicely, the shims are looking quite nice and clean and greased, both upper and lower. The slides are moving nice and smoothly. The bottom one, you can feel there's a very slight bit of resistance there, but compared to the top one, but that's obviously because there's been a little bit of water ingress, but it's fine. I mean, that's really nice and smooth, but I guess up here it's away from all the road debris, etc. But well, looking good, especially with that new body panel trim piece. Whoa, an extra 5 miles an hour on this thing now. So time to get that wound back. I was going to be turning that back using a flat bladed screwdriver like so, but no, it's not going anywhere, so I've got my little tool out. I'll just need to figure out which one it is that works, and then you put it onto the end of your socket on an extension bar like that, and you fit it into the whichever bit that you need, and then hopefully it turns. It doesn't look too bad, but well, time will tell. So I went back in very easily. I used that one, the two round bits, and I think it's almost flush. I'm just going to test it first. I'll probably put a little bit of grease, a smearing of grease on that, just to keep any corrosion at bay. But I'll see if it fits first before I do that. It's done very nicely. I think it's well worth taking the Dremel if you've got corroded caliper hangers. Clean that up. So that slipped on there easily. One thing that I'll point out to you is, you see I've got the cross. So that cross should be sort of like at right angles to the disc, the horizontal line, because the horizontal line has to locate into that. So if you've got that at a different angle, say like that, and you try to put it on straight, it won't go on fully. So don't get yourself frustrated try to get this type of caliper on. Just make sure you take it off, make sure it's, you know, straight up and down, and that's virtually horizontal, I guess. And then when it comes to fitting it, it should, once you push these things in, see how it just locates, no problem. So that's a tip. I found that out many years ago on a Kia Picanto, same style of caliper. Couldn't understand why on earth I couldn't get the friggin' caliper to go back on. It came off no problem. And it was because of that. You have to make sure that cross is aligned. So you see it there, it's got to be straight on. You know, don't have it at an angle 2 o'clock or 1 o'clock or something. It's got to be at the 3 o'clock position, and then it'll slip in. So I'm going to put grease on that. I'll put a bit of copper slip, I think, on the inside edge here, and that'll be about it. And then that should be getting bolted back up. Well, that's it all installed. One of the things I have noticed definitely with the Honda Jazz, it can be a bit difficult to get the threads started when putting these back into the slide pins. Maybe it's this car, I don't know, but I have noticed that before. It's a bit more difficult to locate them. So my tip would be put the bottom one in first. Then what I did was I actually got my screwdriver in here and I just kind of moved the caliper up and down a bit to get the bolt into the slide pin, and then off you go. But you will find that these bits here, they will tend to rotate, but that's what you've got your 17mm socket spanner for. But that's it all done. The next thing is to put the wheel back on, and I'll do the other side. Hopefully the other side will be very quick, because I won't have to keep stopping and starting for what do you call it, camera shots. If you're doing this yourself, theoretically it could take you half an hour, I suppose, even 20 minutes, assuming you've not got any problems with corrosion. But I think it's probably taken me over an hour to do this, stopping and starting. But any questions, just ask, and take it from there. Okay, see you the new. Here's the the passenger side on a right-hand drive vehicle. You can see it's pretty bad. I say these discs, I think they're only about 2 years old. They're not old. And here's the pad carrier. The pads, they're not even moving. The caliper slide pins, they're absolutely solid. I'm going to have to do quite a bit of work, I think, on this one. So I'm going to knock the pads out first. I'll do the same thing, clean up here, clean up there, knock these out, check how serviceable these guide pins are. I might actually have a set, I think, for one of these in the shed, so I'll double check what they're like and take it from there. But yeah, this side is a lot worse. Thankfully all the nuts and bolts came out okay. But yeah, there's no, well, there's a little bit of movement, I was just pressed, but there was no way those were working as they should have been. So a decent going over. I've cleaned up all the faces. These are, they're not nearly as spring as the other ones, but they are moving. Yeah, they're definitely not as bouncy. In fact, I'm going to go and check, before I put these back on, I'm going to double check. Things are much better though. I'm going to double check what the ones are I've got in the car. They might be from a Kia Ceed, but if they're for a Jazz, I'll grab them. Well, that's this side done now. You can actually see the difference. It's not nearly as rusty this side. So the slide pins are moving nicely. Everything's greased up. No problems really. This side, the caliper seemed to align better, but I still would recommend that you put on the, I can't see for the sunlight, I would recommend you put the bottom bolt in first, because then any fiddling about you can do from the top a lot easier, unless you're up on a ramp, which will be fine and you won't need to worry about that. So now it's time to put the wheel back on, and I can't even take my own advice. I'm going to have to take the other side off and put this ring in place on the wheel. Don't know how critical that actually is, but it's meant to be there to fit on that bit, so I better do it. So there we go, wheel back on and it'll be job done. Section. Don't forget to put that in if you've got alloy wheels. But anyway, it's looking quite good. Just need to take the car out for a test drive once I've taken the wheel off and fitted that bloody ring.